people is, hands up who has been to the museum. Okay, so yeah, like maybe just under half. How many of you have been to the museum in the last year? Okay, hey, great. So hopefully by the end of this day, I've encouraged you to come and make the trip to Glencoe and see the museum as it is just now before it has a revolutionary makeover. So just to briefly go over the history of the museum, this was in its first premises. It was founded by local women after being in a local heritage competition. They didn't win that, but it made them realise that there was a lot of local history and stories and no one had recorded that. So they got together, created the museum, and it opened in 1967. It's just that little white building, very, very small, so they outgrew the premises very quickly. And then they moved into which are the current premises on the village road in Glencoe. The picture at the top left there is Barbara Fairweather. She was one of the founders of the museum. The picture over on the top right is the museum cottages as they were before the museum took it over. As you can see, it's a bit run down. It had the tin red roof on the top. The bottom right is what it looked like inside, so not great. And it was actually going to get demolished, but by the museum taking it over, that kept it. And it's one of the only heather thatched cottages in the area like that. And the bottom left picture is one of the first museum patrons, Mrs. Jean MacDonald Clark, opening the museum, and it opened its doors in 1972. So Glencoe Folk Museum did really, really well in the 70s and 80s. That's in 1975. And it got up to 30,000 visitors a year at that time, which is really quite high. It's a very small site. That was helped because the bypass wasn't built then, so the main road went through Glencoe Village, and it was before the Ballahills Bridge was built, which meant that there was really big long lines of traffic, so people came into the museum when they had time to spare. This is it in the 90s. So one of the things that has came out of all the feedback and surveys that we've been doing with visitors, both locals and tourists that come to the museum, they like the charm, the quirkiness as they call it. Yeah, the style was how much can you fit into a small space as possible. We call it the curated clutter. So this is it in the 90s where, yeah, it's really full, there's not much space at all. It's your typical traditional museum setup. People came here to read and look at things. It wasn't a space where they had like an events or an activity programme. So from a learner background, when I look at that, although it looks really interesting, I think, where will people go? There's no room for them. So that's obviously a museum that wasn't thinking about that, whereas nowadays we really are. And this is the mock-up of what we're hoping to do. So the cottages in the middle there at the front, and then we've got a buyer building at the front as well. It's going to be conserved and extended, and then out the back, extension building will be built. And if we look here, this is just some pictures of what it is outside. These kind of lean-tos were built in the 80s, I think, so that was the last time that the museum had a redevelopment. So it's much needed, and as you can see the objects that are outside having to survive Glencoe's weather, which is very unpredictable. So that will be getting demolished, and that's where the extension building will be getting built. That's just an image there to let you see the plans inside. In a bit more detail there. We're going to get our first ever toilets on site, which we're very, very excited about. This here, the images that I'm going to show you, these aren't 100% set in stone what it's going to look like. This is the exhibition designer's design that was submitted as part of our funding bid to the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So this is just to give you an idea. Things could change, but this is the image for the extension building. inside, and at the moment the idea is to have like a timeline on the back wall because we have quite an eclectic collection. Some of the objects are very important, but they don't quite fit into a theme or a display very easily. A good example is the LAHS goddess, which is there at the front. So the timeline's like a way for us to be able to create that and tell the Glen's history through the ages. This building, I'm really excited about. That's the Buyer building that's at the front next to the cottages. The plan is to create a community gallery space. This is going to be a free space that is before the reception hay wall that people can use in the community for meetings. It's like a research hub. We want local groups to be able to put on temporary exhibitions, so that could be a local photographer or artist or even a school group and put their work up there, and we can have themed activities running alongside that as well. So the plan is to have 2 of those per year. And yeah, as you can see in the image here, hopefully we can use it as a hired event space if anyone needs it as well. We'll have facilities for PowerPoints and talks. I won't bother reading out about our partners, but if you are interested you can read it. I'll point out the pictures instead. So the top left one is the mock-up for the clan room. So we have 5 themes: our clans, our cottages, our lives, our roots, our place. So our clans, all about the Jacobites, the clan culture in the area, and of course the Glencoe massacre. And we don't have a lot of objects to be able to tell that story, so instead we want to create a visual, audio, immersive experience in the Glencoe cottage. The top right image is for our roots, all about the story of the museum and how that was created, information about our founders and everyone that's been involved in that. That's where we really want to try and retain the charm that people have been talking about when they say that they love the museum. So that room, I think we want to try and make it as personal as possible.
Keep that one off.
Testing 1, 2.
So the top right image is our roots, talking about the museum's founders.
We can probably hear you if you speak up.
Okay, yes, I'll shout, I'll project my voice. So our roots, we want that to be quirky, charming, the curated clutter that we've been talking about, that people seem to really love, and we want to add personal touches to the interpretation to that by having like handwritten labels, for it to feel like you're stepping into the old museum. So yeah, we're conscious of making sure that that room doesn't change that much. And actually the team has just started an oral history project, speaking to locals to record their memories on lots of different topics. We've just done a couple so far, but they've been so heartwarming, so interesting, so amazingly worthwhile, and I can't wait to keep on doing that and to see what comes out of it. Every person has another couple of people that suggest to you to talk to, or they say, have you looked at this source? So we're finding out so much just in those initial ones, and yeah, it's going to be a really great asset to what we're doing with interpretation. we want it to be not a curated voice only, but to really have local people share what it means to them to live in the area and to experience the Glen through the decades. And then yeah, the bottom one there is just another image of our Clans area there as well. So yes, all of this looks great and sounds very exciting. So how are we affording that? It's all coming to 2.1 million, and the museum doesn't have 2.1 million in its bank. So we're putting reserves that we can, but 1.4 million has already been fundraised through the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and these are some of the other funders that we've received money from as well. So we do have 2 million raised so far, so we've just got a little bit more to fundraise. We're hoping to hear the outcome of a few of them over the next month or two, and at the moment the plan is hopefully to have an open season this year, and then to close, decant the museum, and then building works will be able to start then. So it is a very exciting time for the museum. Going to be a very busy time, but it's much needed. It's been something that the museum has wanted to do since 2010 onwards, and it was in 2018 that they hired the project director, David, and a colleague, and really, setting action for the redevelopment to go ahead. It's had its challenges. Obviously, it's had to go through the pandemic like everyone else, and that set it back with staff going on furlough, funding being closed, and then the cost of living crisis as well has really deeply affected it, almost doubling the amount that it's costing to do. And if you come up to my stall afterwards and have a chat, you can see what I've been getting up to, and yeah, please do come and visit us this season before it shuts its doors and it updates itself, and hopefully, all going well, it will be ready to the public in the end of 2024 with a grand opening in 2025 springtime. If you have any questions at all, any suggestions, get in touch with any of us at the team. We're very friendly, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much.
We'll do questions for the first three after we've heard from all three of them. So if you want to save your questions till afterwards.
I don't know if you want to risk
Trying
it out.
Is there another one?
There's only 2 supplies today. I can try and see if it works just now. It's always the way with technology.
Yes. All was working perfectly. We tested it and...
Apologies for anyone's ears. Testing. It looks like it's not going to be the same ball today, and it's the equipment that's been provided, so it's a bit of a shame.
Yes.
But I'll do.
Wow. Hello. Well, that's a nice one to follow.
Speak up.
I can't speak any louder than that. That's my loudest. Can you hear me at the back?
No.
No.
Right,
yeah.
we'll try this.
We'll try that one.
The first microphone didn't work. Let's see this one.
So.
I'll just turn them down so that they don't deafen everybody when I'm testing them.
I'll try and talk as loud as I can. Can you hear me now? At the back? Yeah. Right. So, the first thing I was thinking about was actually being here today at Rockfield Centre, because if you'd said to me, in 2007, I was trying to think, you know, those 11-year-olds that left Rockfield in 2007 and said goodbye to the school, you know, now they're what, 28? Maybe have children of their own that they bring, and they're probably upstairs playing in the, you know, in the kids' pub. And I'm thinking, you know, that was amazing inspiration from the people, from the community of Oban, getting together and bringing this whole thing together. And that passion and perseverance, and again, you know, with Rockfield, it was a lot of perseverance, especially with planning and money and funding and coming together. We at Kilmartin have had a very similar story. And going back even further, at least 25 years ago was my very first visit to Kilmartin Museum. And I've got my 2 younger boys, husband, and we've been up on holiday, and we did, I think as most old families would do with their children, the children had a go with the kern, you know, they ground the grain into the flour, and they loved the interactive map that used to be in the first room in the museum where you pressed all the buttons. And I was thinking, you know, if I had known then that 25 or so years in the future, there I would be, just at the point where we're just about to open after a £7.5 million redevelopment. And it's been a very long journey. I've been there, I'm Julia Hamilton, and I'm the education officer, team lead, and I've been at the museum since 2006. And since 2010, that is when our journey began. But I'm going to show you a little film, and you might have seen the film, it's on our website, but I'm fingers crossed it's going to work, because you know, that journey for Kilmartin and for Argyll and conserving the prehistory, it all starts with these people. So let's see if we can. So those people, thousands of years ago, we're talking about the hunter-gatherers, the Neolithic early farmers, the Bronze Age, metal workers, going into the Iron Age, all of these time periods, each of those families and communities have added something to the history and the prehistory of what we know today of Argyll. And although it says Kilmartin Museum, and we preserve obviously what has been found, archaeologically we preserve what's been found in the Glen, we are also the point of contact for the whole of Argyll. And with our new interpretation in the gallery, we're not just talking about Kilmartin Glen. I mean, we've got a lot to update, but we're also bringing in the islands and the rest of Argyll, so it's a much more wholesome story. And so over to the new museum here, I mean, I think, hands up, if I would hope that everybody here has been to Kilmartin Museum. So hands up who's been. And I'm not going to say hands up who's been in the last year, obviously. we actually closed in 2020, and we closed just before. We actually made the decision to close the doors and not reopen after the 2019 season because of COVID and because of what we heard. And we already took that decision in February 2020 that we thought it was too risky to open with this new virus that was going around. So we actually closed then, and we are hoping we will be open this summer. But on to the reason why we've actually done because a lot of people say, well, it's the nice little museum, but why on earth do you need to redevelop? So I keep changing the pictures as I go along. So, of course, the museum opened in 1997. It was brought together by Rachel Butters and David Clough. And it was a fantastic museum at the time. But of course, as time progresses, and we have done so many excavations, particularly since 2010, that we've amassed a whole collection of artifacts and objects, and some amazing, amazing finds. And of course, a lot of those are still in the research process, but a lot of what we have done has been researched, and we have new knowledge. And those new items need to go into a new collection, and it needs to be interpreted. But the problem we had was, because we are collecting for the whole of Argyll, so if any of you find, if you're digging in potatoes and you find a beaker, then please give us a call and bring it to us. But we are the collection point. So as you can imagine, over the last sort of 13 years, our one room that was the collection store, it was just bursting, absolutely bursting. We couldn't get any more in there, we couldn't get any more in the kitchen areas, in the hallways, so that had to be readdressed. Excuse me, so change the picture again. Right, so it wasn't just the collections, and obviously the excavations are ongoing, and we've got one starting in September this year. So the collection stores are full, so it's hard to curate anything that's coming in because we haven't got the space. And then the cafe, we used to have people actually sitting outside waiting until there was a table spare inside, so that had to be readdressed. And then the education service, which we had a small room. We could have 10 adults, only 10 adults in that room, or 12 children, which is just crazy because, if you had, say, Rockfield or Park Primary come down with average 26 children in the class, we had to split them up and then find extra staff. So it was getting to the point where it was really difficult to manage on a day-to-day basis for the education service. So in 2010, it was decided that we have to really think about what we're going to do, and we have to make a bigger space, particularly the gallery itself. So people ask, well, why didn't you just knock the whole, just flatten the whole site and just build, you know, a big new, you know, brand new museum? But we didn't like that idea because we still wanted it to blend in with the village, and we wanted to keep the mass and the character. So having to, you know, which did increase the cost, and that went up to 7.5 million. We got 2.5 million from the lottery, and the rest has been private individuals and big organisations that have contributed. So these are just, I could have put the plans, but the plans that we have are so small, but I have got them on the table so you can have a look at the floor plans. But that is, if you remember, there was a garden between the side of the house. That is the cafe area. The garden is gone, and they dug down meters and meters and meters. See, that's the side of the conservatory, and this is just starting to build up that floor level. That was the old cafe, which has now gone from 43 seats to about 68. Increased, and that we are actually stood in the old we are actually stood in the old museum itself. It was just one big room which was split into 4 tiny areas, and of course you'll remember yourselves that if there were, we had to be careful as to how many people could actually go in there at one time because it was such a small space. And this is to the other side of the house, and this is where the new museum, the new gallery has enveloped the whole of the house building. I'll show you. So this was that was the old front door. If you remember, the library was on the right hand side. We've kept the library, but it's gone up a story, so it's gone up to the top, the 3rd floor. And which is exactly the same floor space, so it's just mirrored. So they have dug underneath, gone into the basement area there, and that's putting down the first layers of concrete. So this was started early last year. This is actually the education room. We're calling it the learning centre, which is 3 times the size of the old one, and. You know, the opportunities that we will now have for the education to get much larger groups in, and also we have such a good team of volunteers. We've got about up to 60 volunteers that help us at the museum, and we really want to increase that. But now we've got the capacity and space to do that. And there it is. It's going up. And then this is when the building starts to wrap itself around the old house. As you can see, so that is the outer wall. The space for the gallery is 240 square metres, which is, I think, would that be about 2,400 square feet? I'm not a mathematician, but it's, you could fit the old museum gallery, what, 5, 6, 7 tiles into that space. And that's from the outside. And then as you can see, this, if you were stood here, you're looking down one side of the gallery, you go down there and then across the back end and then down the other side. There's lots of window space. Windows looking right out onto Glebe Cairnfield. And then this is the start of the Learning Centre, looking out again. And then this was just recently. It's in all of this time. I mean, they started building in 2021. They were supposed to start, obviously, in 2020, but okay. But because of COVID, it was everything was put on hold. So 2021 they started, and they have now actually left the premises. And it's now all the internal. So you might drive by and think, oh, you know, is it open? But of course, all the outside and all of that is done, but now it's the inside, it's all with the fitting. And that is the learning centre there. So here's a picture of the outside at the moment, which you would be able to see from the road, and all of this here, all of this is one huge wall, but it's at such a height that you can sit. It's really nice space. And then that's part of the car park. And that's a back chute. And I'm sorry it's so dark, but it was really dark. Getting dark when I took the photo. So this is the final. We've still got the bar cafe. That is that building in the middle. Is the reception area with a huge mega collection store underneath, which has got glass windows so anybody coming can have a look and you can see what's going on inside. And then we have a dry lab, a wet lab, the learning centre. And all of this space along here is the gallery. We are very much looking forward to the summer. I can't give you an actual date, but I can answer all the questions you have and further updates later at any time. So thank you. Which is it just the arrow keys to move forward? I'll introduce myself. I'm Jane Martin. I work for Historic Environment Scotland, and my job title is District Visitor and Community Manager. And the area that I cover is Central West, which means something to Historic Scotland, but it's really Argyll and a little bit of Lochaber as well. There are 43 sites within the Central West area. 3 of them are staffed, 3 of them are keykeeper sites, and the other 37 are unstaffed. But that doesn't mean they're unloved or not noticed. We have a variety of partnerships and relationships with a lot of people around about these other monuments as well. So I've worked for Historic Scotland for 20 years in a variety of roles, but I'm based in Iona, and I'm still based in Iona, and really pleased to have Tara, my colleague, with me today, a very enthusiastic team member. Something that's really new about this role is the word community, and that's something that we're really hoping to take forward as we move forward. And Tara's really pushing that with me as well. So today I've been asked to speak about 4 of the properties that we have. And the first one is Ardhatton. Hopefully I've got a nice picture of that. So Ardhatton is an unstaffed site. It's the ruins of a Valliscollian priory, that may not be good enough, which was founded in 1230, but it was converted to secular use following the Reformation. And today, for us, it's a very interesting site because it's ruins that we look after, but there's also private dwellings nearby, and in fact, some of those residents look after a garden on site as well. So you can access the garden all year round. You just drive past, there's a little car park at the pier, you can walk in. The gardens are open from April to the end of October during the day and a Wednesday, and they also run a fete, and this year it's the 11th of June, which is a little bit earlier than usual. So Ardhatton is really a good news story that I have today. It's running as it should, all as well. So the second site that I'm going to talk about, I'm just taking them in alphabetical order, is Bunall Iron Furnace, and it's the most complete charcoal fueled ironworks in Britain. It was founded in 1753 and it worked until the 1870s. So Bunall Iron Furnace is normally one of our staffed seasonal sites, so it would be open from April to the end of September. So they use the word normal, and that's because Bunall Iron Furnace, unfortunately, is fallen into one of our larger nationwide projects, which is snappily titled High Level Masonry. So you can see the fencing that is around a lot of buildings here. We're actually quite lucky with Bunall because it's multiple buildings
set in its landscape. So some of the buildings are still open, and essentially it's been open through the last summer the way it normally is in the winter. So there's a small element of access, but it's really not ideal. So just to tell you a little more about the high level masonry project, we have had increased incidents in the deterioration of stonework on our sites, and that includes some masonry faults. And so we have started a programme of inspections, and these are like fingertip inspections. So they're pretty specialised. We've had to have staff trained, and obviously there's also equipment involved in order to access some of the sites. To be honest, it was a surprise to us when Bernal fell under this high level masonry project because it's roofed. Most of the other sites are unroofed. However, that's where we are. The Bernal is scheduled for its visit in mid-May, and it's 15 days that they'll be on site. But the good news is that as the project is developed, the team will actually undertake some small-scale works as they go along. So we are quietly confident, but nobody writes it down. We might be able to open the site in June. It's possible that there will be small areas of closure, so some of the fencing may still be in some places, but the intention is that we'll have the site staffed come June time. You can obviously keep you updated about that. Next site is Dunstaffnage Castle and Chapel, and it's one of our year-round staff sites, open all year, and it will go to being summer hours on the 1st of April, and we'll be happy to see Tara return down to that. So Dunstaffnage was built in the 1200s, and its story includes Robert the Bruce and Flora MacDonald. There are two projects ongoing at Dunstaffnage at the moment. One is to do with the timber staircase, and that's something I'll talk about in the next slide as well. So the timber staircase has some concerns. We have some concerns over it. Well, we have some concerns over it, and so it's been closed for a while. And there have been some repair works done, but ultimately we're just going to have to replace the staircase, and that's going to be a longer term project. It doesn't have a significant impact on the visit because you can still access the wallhead if you go up through the gatehouse. The second project is one that I'm really delighted to talk about, and that's septic tanks. I know a lot more about septic tanks than I think I should do. And so the little visitor centre that's next to the castle was actually a domestic property, and we use it for visitor toilets. It was really designed for that. So it's slowly kind of been failing and has now failed. And so we have portaloos on site. The plan is to put in a waste treatment works, and so it's quite a big project, but we hope to get that started in April. It's apparently a 6-week plan, so we're kind of hopeful, but we do need to ensure we have all the licensing in place, and that's a question mark, shall we say. But on the plus side, we have our annual Viking event at Dunstaffnage again this year, so that's the 27th and 28th of May, and that works alongside our programme of reenactors that are usually in place across the summer. And the other thing to just highlight is that we have an Easter trail, and there's actual chocolate eggs this year. So Easter weekend at Dunstaffnage Castle. So the fourth site to talk about is Kilharn Castle, which is at the end of Loch Wall. I'll just consult my notes again. Built in the mid-1400s, and it became a garrison stronghold in 1689 and was abandoned about 100 years later. So it's an iconic site. It's the site that I get most questions about out of all the 43. So Kilharn was closed in the summer of 20 and 21, just as part of COVID, and then at the start of 1922, it was closed under our high-level masonry project. It's slightly different though because it has other issues, which is the timber stair, which is inside it. So it's really a two-pronged attack to get Kilharn back open again. One is to get the masonry check, so the fingertip along the wall heads done, and for slightly complex reasons, it's our own team that's going to have to do that rather than the team that's working its way around the country. And so our architect is to undertake a diploma in fingertip surveys, and we hope to have the survey done this summer. Now, I would like to say that that means the fencing will come down, but we just can't predict what it will find. But the intention is certainly to remove a lot. If you've been out recently, there's fencing right the way around it. It may be, as banal, that it might be small areas with the fencing. The internals, though, it's not such a good story. The timber work that's in there, if you can picture it, you go up a little stair, there's a platform, there's a stair off that, and another platform. So that's going to be quite a huge job to replace, and that's likely to be a longer term project. So for Kilhern, it's likely we'll get fencing down, but internal access may be a bit longer. It's quite interesting, we've got these signs on the fencing to try and make them a bit well, to explain why it's there. There's a QR code. If you look at our website, you can get a lot of information about the high level masonry. But when people take this photograph, they can't see that sign. So I had somebody the other day that sent me a beautiful photograph. You could see the fencing, but we weren't able to tell them the story. So to finish on a positive note, I'm going to tell you about volunteering for Historical Bank of Scotland as well. So you'll find a lot of detail about it on our website. We were probably a bit slow to take on volunteers, but it was something that we started before the pandemic. Volunteers do a whole range of things across Historic Scotland. Play piano in some places, they garden, they run guided tours. In our district, we were exploring volunteers at Dunstaffnage, and it was to have a Gaelic theme. But to be honest, we never quite got it off the ground. So that's why we're really keen to take this opportunity to promote it. So you can volunteer at our sites, and come and have a look at our table and have a chat if you might be interested. We also have volunteering at events. The one that everybody remembers is the Lisco event, and we use a lot of volunteers to help there. We also can ask all of you to volunteer if you visit any of our sites. As I've said, I've got 37 unstaffed sites, and you're the eyes on the ground for us. So Monument Monitor is one of these things where we've got a sign up, we say this is what we're interested in, it might be a boggy spot, take a photograph and send it to us, and it allows us to monitor from afar. We've got a ranger service based in Edinburgh, Lisco and Orkney. That might not be too much of an option for you here, but we also you can help the archive and national record. But as I said, we're really keen to encourage people to come and help us at Dunstaffnage and Banal. It may be just engaging with visitors, not just engaging with visitors, bit of interpretive conversation, but it may be a bit of research to help us kind of move forward as well. Just a final pitch for our website. For all the sites that I've talked about, and all our other sites as well, if you look at the site page, you'll find the statement of significance for the monument, and that's got a whole load of information in it, and there's also links to our online resources, Scran and Canmore, and you can find pictures and plans and details as well. Okay, thanks very much.
Does anybody have any questions for our first three speakers? Do you want to stand up, the three of you? And
Could I ask Glencoe a question? Do you have any plans to incorporate the Appin murder into the museum?
So there is a window frame that's on display in the museum. It's kind of tucked away in a corner, so it's quite easy to miss it, but actually it was in one of the photographs that was up in the PowerPoint. That is going to go into probably our clans room that I was talking about. That will be in one of the cottages, and we've kind of talked about how to display that, and one of our ideas was to have it like as a window, and to put it in a glass pane so you could look through it, and yeah, that story will be getting told there, and that object will just be getting a lot more attention
yeah, unfortunately, the museum is just struggling for space in AHA. Like it's on display, which is great, but yeah, it's quite missable, and that's a really interesting.
It's a good story.
It's a very good story, AHA. So yeah, it'll definitely be going on display and getting told just how it's displayed. I'm not sure yet, but it'll be there, so check it out.
Thanks very much.
Yes, Carol?
Question for Kilmartin. You mentioned that Kilmartin's museum's brief is bigger than just the immediate area and covers Argyll. So I wonder how you plan to engage with local groups.
Right. Once we're open, I mean, what we've been doing, the Education Service has been doing it whilst the museum's been closed. We've been travelling throughout Argyll and attending community events. We've been in village halls, community halls, we've been on the islands, we've been at the Agrarian Games, the Oban Games, and we've had all the information and displays, and we've done that when COVID permitting. We've done that over the last couple of years. With regards to the museum building in itself, obviously consultation has gone on with the local community in Mid-Argyll. But for the future, because we've got the space, we'll be able to have much more. What we found it's a difficult one, because what we found when we've been going around Argyll is people have given us ideas. So all those communities have given us ideas for exhibitions, for talks, for activities that we could do at the museum and work with other communities. So we've got a whole heap of ideas that we can take forward once we're open, and that could be events at certain times of the year. We do still. One of the biggest things was, and we found this through COVID, was we started doing our face-to-face talks, which were held in the village, what was called the Living Stones at the time. It's now the church. We have been delivering those online, so they're now up on YouTube. And what we got from the community was, we'd love to have you. Could you do something about our area, or get a speaker or somebody local? So yeah, we're going to continue with the online talks. But what we will do, we will still have face to face, but we'll be recording them and have them online at the same time. So we have an average of about 70 people each talk each month, and they come from all over the world, particularly America and Canada, and especially people that are looking to get that connection to their ancestors as well. So does that answer the question? Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, we will move on to the slightly faster and furious area of the event with our new groups. So starting with Oban Heritage Hunters.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Feist the Marvel Virginia. Agus fáilte go in it Achan na Craighe. Welcome to the Rockfield Centre. I've only got a couple of minutes, so I've always been accused of talking too quickly, but I knew it would come into its own at some point. On the screen you can see just a snippet of one or two of the items that we have concentrated on, and as Julia mentioned, the Rockfield Centre has really come a long way since its beginnings. It started off working in the huts, and we've managed to restore the building, and it's as it is, as you can see it now. The Heritage Group was one of the four core themes that were identified by the community, and we have started right at the beginning and brought the whole Heritage Hunters group along with us. So it was identified by the community and we have developed it. We started off by, in a very small way, by having small scale exhibitions, starting to collect an archive, have been very lucky in getting donations of collections, which has started our archives. We also have been given artefacts, one of which is the alphabet stone. I don't know if you've been up the stairs, but in the corner opposite the office, there's an alphabet stone which came from the original Ragged School in Glenshealock Terrace. called the alphabet stone because it's got all the letters of the alphabet incised into the stone, used as a teaching aid in the Ragged School way back in the mid-18th century. An absolutely fantastic find. It was found in the loft of the replaced building, which was then incorporated into the back of a chimney. So at the back of the actual stone, there's a lot of soot to show its provenance. So it's a really good find. So people think of us when they think of where can we put these artefacts. One or two things are beginning to come our way as well. So these are one or two pictures of some of the things that we've done. What else have we done? I won't have time to go through everything, but these are just the headings. Obviously gathering and researching stories for individuals and projects. Oral recordings, we've discovered, are a very good way of encapsulating the history of Oban. Trying to get stories from people while they're still able to tell the stories, and that's been important. And that's one of our founding principles. Encourage the local people to come along and tell their stories. Along with that, we have blether sessions, and we had a very successful one yesterday. 50 to 60 people in this room talking about the old Oban hospitals. Encouraging people to tell their stories to each other, but to us as well, so we're capturing all that. One of the most successful aspects of what we've done so far, going down the list, is the kids' space at Chinacloinia along at the end of this corridor. I don't know if any of you have had time to go in and have a look at it, but it's telling the story of Oban through play and through display, starting from just after the last ice age, going along to MacArthur's Cave and the Neolithic hunter-gatherers that came in, working round to the fishing industry and all the boats, all the sea-going things that were going on, including seaweed and everything that was gathered there, going around to 19th century shops that were built and the way Oban grew all the time. So basically, the Rockfield Centre Heritage Hunters are concerned with encapsulating the history of Oban and keeping it going for the next generation. One of the exciting things that we're going to work on, and these are one or two things that we're working on. I'll start with the Blethers. We've mentioned that one. The last session is next April, and we usually run them from September to April. During the summer there's not so much demand, other people are doing different things. We've got a big exhibition coming up on Shinty, working with the Shinty Memories group, the wider national group, and that's proving very popular, especially with some of the male volunteers that used to play Shinty. I know girls play it now, but it's the boys that used to play Shinty are really getting excited about it. We also have a big collection of photographs that we're in the process of digitising, and the Shinty photos come into that category as well. So there's lots of things going on. The one that we're really excited about at the moment is the education pack. And that's just the front cover of it. It meets targets for the Curriculum for Excellence, which I'm very glad to say I don't have to worry about anymore. But basically, these are the headings of the education pack that we're going to produce, and it's almost at the good to go stage. This started off when I was teaching in Park School. I wrote a sort of pre-computerised booklet for the children to learn the history of Oban from, with a workbook to accompany it. And these were the headings down to the borough of Oban, but we've added wee bits as time has gone on. So these are the headings that children can learn from, lots of activities they can take part in, room for development for older children, and easy to simplify for the younger children. So I think it's going to be quite a good asset. We're very lucky we've got somebody who's very good with computerising and digitising things, that's taken this old piece of work and revamped it fit for the 21st century. So that's almost ready to go In the future, we've got lots of exciting things happening. As I say, the Arch na Cloyne along at the end of the corridor is not quite complete, but it very shortly will be. It's that extending into another room, and for the first time, I think for quite a few years, there's going to be a launch of a Calmac boat. That's all I'm saying at the moment, but so it's good news, and so that's something we're really looking forward to. Couldn't do it without our volunteers. We meet every Tuesday. Some people look after the books, cataloguing the libraries. We've got some wonderful old books that we've been donated. Things like the Gaelic Society of Inverness journals, which provide fantastic individual stories. All these books will eventually be put onto our website so that other people can access them. We want to expand our research facility. That's a very important thing. We couldn't do it without our volunteers. All of them are very enthusiastic and contribute a great deal to our project. Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Florence and I'm one of the 4 current members or co-founders of the Kilmuir Conservation Project. I'm not really used to having to project my voice too much, so if anybody wants to give me a wave if they can't hear, please do so. So you might not have heard about us yet because it's still quite a recent new project that we just started in the summer last year. And so basically what we call Kilmuir is also sometimes known as St. Columba's Church and Chapel. It's very close to the village of Ford and just on the southern tip of Lochal. It's more of a, what I would call a hidden gem of Argyll's heritage. It's not that well known at all, but it is a scheduled monument, so recognised for its importance. And whilst what we have left is just a church, graveyard and an oratory building, there was once an important township and cattle market nearby. So, like I said, it's still really the early days of the project, and all 4 of us who are involved have full-time jobs outside of this. 2 of us have moved away, so there's just me and Jamie left in the area, which makes it all the more challenging. But in August last year, we managed to have a few people from Historic Environment Scotland come to visit and just give us their thoughts about the place. We noticed some very saddening collapse of part of the oratory building, and we were able to do some emergency works just to prop up part of the structure to prevent further imminent collapse. Other than that, we've basically been trying to raise awareness locally, especially with Christmas markets before Christmas, and just been talking to people in Ford and just seeing who actually knows about this place, even very close by, which isn't everyone. And then more recently, last week, we had someone finally come down to do an options appraisal for us, and that was also funded by Historic Environment Scotland, which is fantastic. We don't have the report yet, but expect to have it next week, which is, again, very exciting. So what we're hoping to do in the future, just very short term, is get that report and do what it says and try to fundraising for it. What we're almost guaranteed will be on it is that we need to remove these ceilings that are, some of them almost trees. Some are going very close to the wall, and some are going through the wall, which is quite problematic. So we'll be going into that as soon as we can. In the longer term, we're hoping to become a charity. So far, we don't really have a proper legal status at all. And we're hoping to get the time to do more research on Kilmuir's history, maybe some archaeological work, because at the moment, while we're very, very interested in the site and we've done the reading we can, we haven't added any kind of knowledge to it. So, yeah. And then the village of Ford used to have a very active village hall, and they've recently turned into a sort of community trust, which is very exciting. So we're hoping to work closely with them and just work with people locally to see what sort of events or activities or what sort of education program one day in some years we could do for them. So at the moment, like I said, we're just starting off, but we do have a Facebook page that you could like if you wanted to. And if you have any questions, you can also email us. And that's it for Kilmure for today, but we have a table very close to the coffee and tea. So
she now switches hats.
Now we're back. So this is my actual job. So I'm the Communications and Marketing Coordinator for the North Museum Castle and Grounds. Unlike Kilmure, I think most of you have heard of us before. If you haven't, we are a heritage site and accredited museum, just a 5-minute drive from here or a 20-minute walk. We're closed today, but if you haven't been there, you should definitely come and visit. And I think even those of you who know the site quite well will be surprised at how much has changed since last season. So I just wanted to do a bit of a rundown on that. So for the last 12 months, it's just ended at the beginning of March, we were doing a National Lottery Heritage funded project called the Denali GLAD project. That stands for Garden, Lakeside Digital. And it's a COVID recovery fund sort of thing that we got. And it has been really fantastic. We got over £110,000 for it. And that meant that we were able to hire 4 members of staff, although very, very part-time. And do a lot of exciting things. We have, amongst other things, built a whole new path that's wheelchair accessible through the grounds, and it lets people see the trees in a whole different angle and light. We've been able to catalogue all the plants that we have. We have been able to add archways and plant new ones, or we'll be doing so very, very soon. We've also been able to add QR trails like these for children all around the site to let them explore it in a different light and discover some of Scotland's mythical creatures. We've also added another trail through the whole grounds as well for adults that just provides a different insight into our history that the guided tour doesn't always do. We have been doing, well, Jamie has been doing lots of school workshops about the environment and different aspects of that through our grounds as well, which has been a very exciting change. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'm not missing out lots of things, but so much has happened and it's really changed the way the site is. So it's worth seeing. And that sort of works out because we're about to reopen for the 2023 season. We're reopening on the 2nd of April, that's a Sunday, and it's just a few weeks away now. We'll be open until the end of October, every day of the week. So 6 days a week, sorry. 6 days, so every day except Saturdays. We have tickets online, or you're welcome to buy them once you're here, but the most exciting news that we have for people who are based locally is that we're using a pay once, visit all year system. So we're doing basically annual passes, except it's the same price as a day pass. So you might as well, and then you can come back anytime that you want. We currently have a temporary exhibition that is the same as last year, called Hope Behind the Lens, and it's showing photography from Hope McDougall, who was once a member of this society, and she took lots of photos in the area in the mid-20th century. So that's just the last year we'll be on, so we do recommend seeing it if you haven't already. And then a very exciting as well, we have a new person working in our cafe, and we're not open yet, but we've tasted some of her baking and it's absolutely amazing. So, other than that, this year we've also been very lucky, thanks to a number of large donations from several organisations. We've been doing a few more work on the castle. First of all, removing the remaining of the ivy on all the curtain walls that's been there still so far. We'll also be sort of surveying the cliff on which the castle stands. You can't really see it on this picture, but it's on a very steep cliff. So we're just going to go through that and check that everything's okay and see if there's anything we don't know about there so far. And we'll be excavating the first floor of the castle, where we're expecting to find an eagle mosaic. But we still need to find it. So. And just finally, very quickly, we're working on our next exhibition for 2024. We don't have a name for it yet, so I don't want to say too much, but it's going to be really, really good. And we've had so much help so far. We have a fantastic team of volunteers helping us doing some research. We are also very lucky to have an intern Ali McGowan, who is with us for 15 weeks and doing some transcription of archive documents for us, and also her own research. So we're very excited for that. And we also have Shannon Calderwood, who is doing a 12-month-long placement with us, thanks to Charts. And yeah, it's been really fantastic to have both of them in our team so far. And that's it.
Hello, I'm Simon from Friends of Kilbride, and I don't have any real photos other than this, but anyway, there we go. What I just want to do is to give you a brief update on where we have got to in our renovation and stabilisation project. Just to check, who has visited Kilbride? Very good. Who's visited in the last 2 years? Oh well, what was changed? We were very much 5 years ago in the position that Kilmuir was in. We had a collapsing site scheduled, but in really imminent danger. Over the past 5 years, we've made, I think, really quite astonishing progress. Phase 1, which we started off as urgent repairs to the memorial burial aisle and removing all the ivy and the vegetation surrounding the site. The site, sorry, for anybody who doesn't know, is the ruins of an early 18th century Presbyterian prayer house and graveyard built on the site, well, not quite sure it was, of a substantial medieval church, and incorporating at the back the memorial burial aisle to Clan MacDougall. Phase 2 was, and we attracted the funding from the Carrick-Gale Community Fund and also Historical Environment Scotland. Those were very urgent repairs to the to the west wall and gable of the prayer house, which was on very, very severe danger of collapse. That was stabilised. Then, unlike probably the rest of the country, we had a very, very busy lockdown. We were able, with a fantastic grant from Historical Environment Scotland of £68,000, to do the whole of the north wall, the east wall, and the session house. And that involved removing 22 tonnes of rubble by hand, by wheelbarrow. Fantastic team of volunteers, which we did. We cleared the site, we made it much more attractive and safeguarded, you know, again, walls which were in very, very bad state. We also then, with the aid of charts, we've incorporated the QR codes. Our tour isn't really just for children, it's for anyone actually. But now you can go around the site at your own speed. It's all plugged into the website with a mobile phone, and that will tell you all about Kilbride as you go around. And so now we come to phase 4, which is the final piece of the jigsaw, which is the south wall. The south wall isn't actually in quite as bad condition as the rest of it, but it has got extensive vegetation growing out of the wall heads, and it's got a nice bulge in it. Over the past year, we've been able to raise about 30,000 from, again, Carrick-Gale Community, Wind Farm Community Trust, from Clan MacDougall Society of North America, from the PF Trust, and from the Sabina Sutherland Charitable Foundation. And we have an application into Historic Environment Scotland for the remaining 40% of funding. Now, I'm not actually allowed to tell you whether that application has been successful because the HES the grant programme is still embargoed. What I will say is that if you go along on Thursday next week, you'll find our archaeologist Claire Ellis digging exploratory trenches. You'll find scaffolding going up during on Friday and the rest of the week after. On the 27th, Michael Hogg and his team will be in for 2 months doing the renovation and stabilisation of the south wall. So from that, you might conclude that HES have given us the money, but in the words of Frances Urquhart in House of Cards, I couldn't possibly say that. You might make that assumption. So, if that were the case, we'd be phenomenally grateful to Historic Environment Scotland and other funders, and it will mean that by the end of May, the site will be completely stabilised and safe and preserved for future generations. And it also means we can actually really start using the site then as a community resource, because there won't be any danger of stones falling on people's heads. So that will be an enormous boon, I think, to the community in the LAHS. That won't be the end of the story from our point of view. There's quite a lot still we will then want to do. The site itself, when you go around the graveyard, is not always easy to negotiate. It can get quite muddy, it can be very slippery, and there are some nasty steps, and some of the grave slabs are in danger of falling over. So there's quite a lot of work we would like to do in terms of putting proper paths in and landscaping a bit. So there's work there to be done. And in addition, we do have, they're actually pretty well underground at the moment, but some very fine 14th and 15th century grave slabs of the Iona school, similar to the ones that you find at Arhatton or at Kilberry. And we would like, obviously, in time to have those displayed properly. We also need to address the issue of toilets, which has come up again, but it's always there. And we would at some point as well like to try and address the issue of accessibility of the site. Because at the moment it is really quite, I mean, not only for people with actual disabilities, but also for those of us who are getting on in years, it isn't the easiest place to negotiate around safely. So there's a big job of work to be done, but I think we will regard it as a very significant achievement in May to actually have got the stabilisation and renovation of the site done so that it is no longer in danger of collapse. And I would say to Kilnure, this can be done actually. It takes a lot of work, but it is incredibly fulfilling and satisfying when you actually get that. So very best of luck to them. Thank you.
I'm not going to test you on who knows who's already been to Lee, but if you haven't come over, please do. It's worth the ferry fare. We have fantastic archaeology and heritage, 2 really fine Iron Age hill forts, medieval old parish church with very unique 13th century boat graffiti on it, and a lot else besides. If you haven't seen it already, before you go, please have a look at our display there, because it presents some of the other activities that we get up to. So Zoe and I are here today from the History Group. I just wanted to focus here just on a few of our kind of recent activities, focusing a little bit on some of the discoveries that we've been making, both on the archaeology side and the history side. Since 2017, ACFA, which is a group of volunteer field archaeologists, which I'm sure many of you know, and Alison is a member of, and they've been working with us to do a comprehensive field survey, walkover field survey of Ling and Torsa, which is now complete, and the final report of the main archaeology is being written up, and that includes, of course, it includes some of the prehistoric, a great deal of the post-medieval, so the last phase of the townships and first phase of improvement, and of course a lot of the slate of activities related to slate quarrying, because we're one of the slate islands. Just a few of the discoveries. A new dune, which is incredible to find. You would think that that would have been noticed before. Walloping great walls, 14-metre diameter, but well hidden under undergrowth. So things can be kind of there in plain sight that you've just never discovered before. And I think for your work, you might well want to go through the survey route before you consider excavation. We're not considering excavation because it's a big expensive venture, and we're not quite sure where we would start. And of course, it also requires landowner permission and other permissions to do. We also have here, which is a drawing that was done last year by his team from Historic Environment Scotland, George Geddes' Rapid Survey team. We've got a very fine roundhouse, very substantial, with turf and stone walls surviving to this kind of height. And in a landscape where there's probably another denuded one fairly close to.
So it is still possible to find some very early sites, even in a place which has obviously been developed very substantially, both in terms of farming and in terms of slate quarrying. We also more recently discovered, partly because there was some new woodland planting, and of course to dig the planting mounds they dig holes and the ground gets flipped over. So in some areas we found flints sitting on the top of the mounds. This is a late Neolithic or early Bronze Age arrowhead blank, so it's not been a finished arrowhead, which came from a site above Curran, so above the ferry, but rather more exciting down at Blackmill Bay, so on the west side of Ling. There's a very nice little site which has produced Mesolithic and Neolithic flints, and there's in situ material there. One of the things that we also conducted, which is one of our lockdown activities, I think a lot of us were quite busy during lockdown, and which we were enabled to do partly with a lot of technical support from Historic Environment Scotland, but also with funding, with fantastic funding which we raised in a very short period of time from supporters, including some people who are here today. And that fed quite importantly into the work that Historic Environment Scotland did at the beginning of last year in terms of their rapid survey. And it may not look much, but it is one of my favourite sites. At the bottom, the southern end of Ling, which has the most fantastic view all the way down the Sound of Jura, so quite a strategic area. We have a series of promontory earthworks, and this is one of them. So there is on top of this a sub-rectangular turf structure. And if you're standing on the top, in fact I think I've got a photograph of you somewhere around that. As I say, you've got kind of very extensive views, Sound of Ling, Sound of Jura, Sound of Shuna, and across to the mainland. So very exciting. And in fact, Ardling is an interesting area, and one of the other things that we try and do to make Ling's history and heritage kind of more accessible is to link up people and places. And I think you can tell a lot of stories by finding stories about people, including way back in the 16th century. And so this is something that's been worked on recently. We have a very exciting, it's a very swashbuckling story around Hector MacLean, and he was a grandson of one of the Clan MacLean chiefs. He was also the son of one of the pirates, and he in fact ended up being beheaded on the Isle of Coll, but that was after he tried to claim the chieftainship of Clan MacLean for himself, and we think that he may have, his house on Ardling may have been very close to the site of this much later property. So 250 years later, Captain John Campbell, who returns from the Napoleonic Wars, is of course allocated to a croft, as some of them were, and built a fine house in Ardling, which of course it was at the time because it's a stone-built house, and making the connections, of course, in between areas. Married 2 years later, Elizabeth Stevenson, of course, one of the Stevenson daughters of Oban, and Zoe does quite a lot of work supporting people who are interested in tracing their families, and so she had traced for 3 Campbell sisters the link between Captain John Campbell and themselves, and they made a visit, as you can see, on an extremely rainy day to Ardling, and so this is them outside the remains of Captain Campbell's fine house. So that's just a few of the things that we get up to on Ling. Thank you.
two stories, one sad, one happy. The sad story is that the Argyll Members Group of the National Trust for Scotland no longer exists. Our long-serving chairman and secretary felt they could not go on any longer, and in spite of a lot of arm twisting, no one could be volunteered to take their place, and so it no longer exists. This doesn't affect National Trust properties in Argyll. They still carry on as they always have done. They will be missing a little bit of finance that we used to give them every year. The second story is a much happier one, and that is the Appin Historical Society. When COVID came along, we were very worried that we wouldn't be able to carry on and that it would come to an end. But thanks to the editor of our twice-yearly Appin archive, this continued and kept people in touch with the society. And since last March, we've started holding regular meetings on the third Saturday of the month. So next Saturday, you're all invited to come to Port Appin Hall at 2:30 in the afternoon to listen to someone telling us about the Ballachulish ferries. I should also mention that the National Trust meetings was on the second Saturday, so now that they don't exist, this society doesn't have any competition. There are a lot of historic sites in Appin, some of which are relatively easy to access. There is, of course, Castle Stalker. This is open from time to time. I think the entry fee is now something astonishing, like £24. So I hope you're buying a few lottery tickets. There's also the Peel Graveyard, which is where James of the Glen was buried. Access to this is with permission from the people at Keele House, because they are very worried about people wandering in there. And they had a burglary a few years ago, which didn't help matters. What else can I say about it? We've got some younger people now on the committee, and I hope things are going to move on in a slightly more aggressive manner, improving the Appin Archive, which is an excellent publication, and maybe doing some field trips. It's all rather in the air at the moment. We've got a full programme, I think, for next year's, starting with someone giving a talk on bridgescapes, and I think he's given this talk around the countryside, so you may know about it, ending up with a lady called Angela Boyle, who describes herself as a burial osteologist. She's going to talk about what they found on the bones that were excavated in the area of the church on the island of Lismore. We hope to have her talk already, but she hadn't got the data ready. In between time, there's going to be a talk about nursing services in the First World War. The niece of one of the people from Ballachulish who evaded being locked up in the Second World War by refusing to speak anything other than Gaelic is going to give us a talk. And one or two other talks as well, once every third Saturday of the month. Thank you.
It's getting late in the day, you've had an awful lot thrown at you this afternoon, so I'm going to be quick. So I'm not talking about all the things we're doing on this more. I want to concentrate on breaking news for you, and Neil's nearly preempted me. Some of you have been involved already before in the community archaeology that we've been doing on this moor. I see one or two of you here. And we were concentrating on the area around the church, which is the choir of the medieval cathedral. But since 2019, we've moved from the church down just below to a very wet-looking area, which is very unpromising. And I want just to tell you that over 3 seasons of digging, we have managed to show that this area is astonishingly rich and of national importance. We have the workshops for the building of the cathedral. We found where they were working. We found where the masons were working, and blacksmithing and so on. So, first of all, that's the 13th century. Next to it is the monastic cemetery. Now, until we found, when I say we, I must say Claire Ellis leading us, and we had Angie Boyle, who you were talking about. Until we got going in that wet area, the idea of Moluc's monastery was very much word of mouth. It was a tradition. But now we've found in a cemetery, including 7th century burials, which brings us nearly to the time when Moluc arrived on the island. So we now know, and we now have concrete evidence of the existence of the monastery. But in on May last year, the last dig we did was just beyond that, where we found what's an associated fine craft industrial site, which is traditional for these early church monastic sites. They had craftsmen working next to the monastic site. And we have, why it's breaking news is we just got back the preliminary analysis from the National Museum of Scotland on the 100 or so important finds that we had from up until May. And the non-ferrous metalworking, this is not iron, this is non-ferrous metalworking. The crucibles we found there, very small, fine crucibles, are the best that have ever been found in Scotland from that period. And we think there's traces of copper in those, so this is bronze. And the National Museum say that a couple of the molds that we found, as well as the crucibles, are from penannular, to cast penannular brooches. Carved stone, we found 3 new early church period stones, which are analogous to what's found in Nig, Applecross, Rosemarkie. And in addition to that, general blacksmithing and ironworking. An enormous range of finds which date to this period, which show that the area, that our monastic site is comparable with prestigious areas. Port Mahomack, Whitehorn and Iona, very similar finds as were found there. But not only that, similar to high status secular sites, Danad, interesting comparisons with Danad, the Brockle Bercy and Clatchard Craig. So this is incredibly important. But what we are hoping that when we get the results from 10 burials, which we hope are from the early church period, which went to the Crick Institute in London through the good offices of Angie Boyle. She because they're doing the 1,000 ancient DNA project, we get 10 done for free, including radiocarbon dates. And this, in connection with the finds I was just talking about, should make this site actually one of the most important sites in Scotland. So we're awaiting the bone dates and the DNA, and I just want you to be aware, just to keep your eye on all this. This is all very much breaking news. We only got these results from the National Museum of Scotland last week, and in order to do the proper analysis of the findings, we're going to have to raise another £20,000. So that's really what I want to say to you. Keep an eye on what's happening in this world. It's extremely exciting, and I think it's going to be a very big story when we get all the results and get it all written. I would say one other thing, since I've got the opportunity to talk to you, is that in April, a new book from Lismore. Look out for it. The 2nd edition of How an Island Lost Its People. New and expanded, so keep an eye on that. Thank you very much.
Blimey, how do we
follow that lot. What an amazing array of heritage we have in this area, and haven't we learned a huge amount? So we're back to our own society, and it's a degree of what do we want, what do you want the future to be? As you know, we came together as a new committee in September, so we're really, really new at all of this. We are going to need your help. This is some ideas we've got, but we are going to need help to make this all happen. So far we've been in touch with a number of organisations who are really keen to help us. So these are the ideas we have if you would like us to put these together, and if you can help volunteer to help us make them happen. These are all provisional, because all the organisations have got to get their funding sorted and their organisation, but this is what we've got an idea. An idea of some practical field archaeology to start going forward, going back to what Alison and many others have done with Lawn Archaeological in the past, of lots of amazing practical field archaeology. Is there a new generation of young field archaeologists and who would like to start doing this? We don't know what we're talking about, so we are going to need help to know how to do this. But Historic Environment Scotland have a community education project. They're keen to come and come out. Provisionally, their idea is 2 weekdays in May, first week of May. Yet to come back. Malton Historical Society have invited us to join their visit which is a guided visit with Tara to Dunstafnage and Manhattan. It's our anniversary, so we're having a party. June 10th at Denali, and we are honoured that we have an original member who started his archaeological passion with Lawn Archaeological, is Professor Tony Pollard, and yesterday he agreed to come to the party and give us a special lecture in the evening. So he's really keen to be involved. He's also writing a book and all sorts of other good things. Charles Hunter introduced him to archaeology through Lawn Archaeological and Historical Society. There are gaps. Any ideas? We're going to be at the Heritage Tent with everybody else for the gathering. We need volunteers to man it and help create the display. We have an idea, which will also feed into the website. Following that, Archaeology Scotland are going to be at the gathering, so they've suggested that we do the Friday, Saturday, do some more practical field archaeology type things. We need ideas of sites, we need ideas of what you want to learn. Again, September has not got a thing yet, but that's you. October we'll be back into winter talks. What do you want to hear from? Did you hear a really good talk over the lockdown that we should have? What topics would you like to hear? Sakona's fantastic Christmas tree decoration festival with the display we're thinking of and various other things is based around a tree, so we can use that there to help promote our 60th anniversary year. We need to know from you what you would like to hear from, what you would like to do. The journal, again, it's going to be a bigger one, so we need to know what you want. We need to hear from past members who've been around. We need to know who we need to remember, who we need to include, what stories, what memories, what photographs you can share of past activities, particularly in the last 10 years. Charles, there was a major journal for the 50th, so there's particularly in the last 10 years, but it can include things that didn't get included in the past one. Can you volunteer to write an article about somebody, about something, please? Just get in touch with us, and as I said, winter talks, we need your ideas. We've got lists, but we want it to be what you want. New website, actually it has gone live. We need more people to contribute to that. We could do all sorts of fun things with this website. Look at being a sort of the whole of lawn covering, we can connect all the information that other groups are doing, we can connect to the groups, we could create a timeline, we could create a map, we could do an events diary. We aren't retired. So committee, you've got a committee that's happy, really doing lots of things, but we're not retired, so we are really strapped for time. So please, can we have more people getting involved so that we can put more on it? What would you like to see a lawn area website covering? What could we include that would be interesting to you? And we've got various other bits and pieces to go on it. But we thought of, again, we need to know what you want. The big one is Easter. The archive of all the journals that we have, we are missing a few. So we may be asking for you to dig out your copies, particularly the people who've been members for a long time. It's fully digitised, it's all PDFs, it's all searchable, it's not yet online, but hopefully it will be in the next couple of weeks. Linked to each one of these, it's all indexed. It's going to be a massive resource of all the heritage that was published by the Lawn Society over the last 60 years. These are some of the early ones. Fabulous. As I say, big thing is we need more ideas, more volunteers, more contributions. What do you want the future of Lawn Archaeological and Historical Society to be? We are delighted we've got into the 60th year. What do we do for the next bit? Now I pass it over to the people who have been giving us questions, giving us all their updates. If you've got any questions for the people who were there before, and for us, give us you've now time. So I don't know if you all want to stand up or what. Yep.
Do this more. What date are these crucibles, and are they going to come back to this more, or are they going to stay in Edinburgh?
Speak up so that everybody behind you're not.
Early church, 7th century.
Right.
So
are they coming back to Lismore, or will they be snaffled by Edinburgh?
Well, time will tell. We are. Our museum is an accredited museum, so we can have treasure trove. So I don't think they will come for the reason that they are supposed to be the best. And I think they will probably be taken by the National Museum. I suspect. But let's see. I mean,
yeah. Okay, thank you very much. You should
Any further questions?
When do you visit a journal?
Sorry?
What month do you visit a journal?
The normal time is October. Is in for the beginning of the next season. So the idea is we will put it all together over the summer, publish for the beginning of next season as usual. Yeah.
Can I ask the lady from Ballahullich, who do you use? How do you have an academic who checks your historical facts before it goes on a label?
Well, in terms of what's there already, I honestly don't know who has written that. I imagine it was written quite a long time ago. There's not been a lot of updates on the exhibits, although the curator will check those things as well, but our displays don't change very regularly. And then going into the redevelopment, we'll be probably working with researchers to do research for us, and then we'll be writing that as a team using our exhibition designers to help us with the interpretation. But yeah, I'll need to get approved certain things, like for the oral history recordings that we've done. We'll need to go as a team and research that to make sure that, you know, it's factual.
Thank you.
Well, can I say a wonderful, amazing thank you to everybody who's been here. Haven't we had an amazing afternoon? Can you all put your hands together to say a very big thank you to